Imagine the year 1457 BCE. The dusty plains of Megiddo echo with the thundering hooves of chariots and the battle cries of warriors. Two great powers of the ancient world collide in a struggle that will etch their names into history forever. This is not just a battle. It's the world's first recorded military engagement, whose details have transcended time. Today, on Historical Quarrels, we travel back over 3 millennia to unravel the secrets of the Battle of Megiddo. A battle so monumental, it gave birth to the word that we still use in times of great conflict, Armageddon. So join us as we dissect the strategies, the myths, and the sheer human will that shaped this legendary confrontation. Welcome to the story of the Battle of Megiddo, where history was written in sand and blood. Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Tyler Eckhart. Today we're going to be talking about the Battle of Megiddo. A couple quick things before we start, though, is big thank you to everyone that has been leaving comments on the shows, leaving their likes, sending me emails. I appreciate it. Appreciate all the advice, all the love. It's been real nice to see, real nice to hear, and I just wanted to thank you guys, my listeners. Second thing, I am working on the second solo show of mine. It's going to be titled Ancient Tabletops. So for those of you that did like the board game episode, that's going to be its own show. So that will be coming out, like 5-6 months from here. We'll see. I was going to prep a bunch of episodes. But besides that, I know a lot of people don't like rambling in the beginning. I just wanted to get those announcements out of the way. So let's go ahead and get into today's tale. It's going to be a shorter episode today. And from now on, I'm going to try and make it shorter as well. We're going to get to the point. We're going to go over the battle, go over a couple of different things, and that will be the end of today's show. So let's get into it. You are listening to Historical Quarrels. So today we turn the pages of history back to an Egypt on the cusp of monumental change. The Nile flows quietly, unaware of the impending transformation of a civilization that has thrived on its banks for centuries. Before Thutmose III, Egypt was a land of intricate dynasties, divine kingship, and a complex social hierarchy deeply intertwined with the rituals of the gods. The pharaoh was not just a ruler, he was a bridge between the gods and the people, a steward of both the spiritual and the temporal realms. But beneath this divine veneer, political undercurrents were stirring. Power struggles and court intrigues often dictated the course of history, just as much as the battles fought on the field. Enter Thutmose III. Born to a warrior king and a minor wife, his path to the throne was not straightforward. Thutmose's early life was overshadowed by the reign of Hatshepsut, hopefully I pronounced that right, his stepmother and co-regent, a formidable woman who donned the title of pharaoh herself. But this young prince was not to be underestimated. From his early years, Thutmose was exposed to the military and political machinations of the Egyptian court. His education was not just in reading hieroglyphs or performing rituals. He learned the art of war, the subtlety of diplomacy, and the weight of leadership. And when I say this man loved studying war, I mean he lived, breathed, and ate war. It was his life. And from an early age, he showed his capabilities for it. And as he grew, so did his ambitions for Egypt. Thutmose III envisioned an empire that stretched beyond the traditional boundaries, one that could dominate the tumultuous Near East. But to realize this dream, he needed to assert his authority both at home and across the lands that skirted the Great Nile, specifically the Levant. Egypt needed that to essentially become like the Egyptian empire that we read about in history books. So, his first great test was brewing on the horizon. A rebellion in the Canaanite region that threatened Egyptian supremacy. The stage was set for a confrontation that would not only define his reign, but also shape the course of history. The Battle of Megiddo loomed near, a battle that would become a legend. And so legendary, we're speaking about it today. However, Tutmosis III's rise to power was a journey through the shadow of a unique co-regency with his stepmother. He had to share it with his stepmom, and it wasn't one of those stepmom stepson relationships that we on the internet know about today. Though you would think that was a possibility, especially with Egyptian incest. Actually was not happening. Stepmom was not stuck in any, she wasn't stuck in the drying rack for their clothes or whatever they were doing. Nothing like that. Hatshepsut wanted to be dominant, and she actually was quite a capable leader. She led a bunch of construction projects, built a bunch of diplomatic ties with neighboring countries, and had a bunch of trade routes that really helped Egypt prosper and thrive during her rule, because she was in charge essentially while Tutmosis III was 2. And when Tutmosis III was 2, he became co-regent with her due to his father's death. So, yeah. However, this period wasn't just about shared power. It was a complex dance of political intrigue and ambition, especially while he was growing up. Hatshepsut wasn't merely a placeholder. She wielded real power, leaving a big mark on Egypt's legacy through monumental building projects, as I said, and diplomatic ventures. In the wings, young Thutmose was carving his own path under the guise of shared rule. He sharpened his military acumen, leading campaigns and securing the army's allegiance, preparing for the day he would take the reins alone. He hung out with a bunch of generals, and he was kind of gearing to go and to go fight a bunch of battles and quash some of the rebellions and some of the assholes in neighboring countries that weren't bowing to Pharaoh. And he needed Hatshepsut to die for that. He didn't have her killed, he just waited. So when Thutmose finally emerged as the sole ruler, he unleashed a vision for Egypt that was both bold and expansive. And his military campaigns were not mere border skirmishes, but ambitious endeavors to stretch Egypt's influence far and wide. He just wasn't content with the status quo. He was crafting an empire. But Thutmose's impact extended beyond the battlefield. He redefined Egypt's internal landscape, centralizing power, streamlining administration, and fostering trade and culture. His reign wasn't just about conquest, it was about shaping a civilization. He was a very good ruler overall. And these early years under Tutmosis III really sets the stage for what many would call the golden age of the New Kingdom. Yet looming on the horizon was still this defining challenge of his reign, which would be the Battle of Megiddo. It was a conflict that is going to certainly test his military genius and his vision for Egypt. And what's great about this, and what's cool about this battle in particular, is about 3,000 years later in World War I, some of the tactics that Thutmose would do gets copied by an ally general. By a British general in World War I. So it's pretty cool. All right. So Pharaoh Thutmose III began a reign in which the Egyptian empire reached its greatest expanse by reinforcing the long-standing Egyptian presence in the Levant. After waiting impatiently for the end of the regency by Egyptian pharaoh Hatshepsut, he immediately responded to a revolt of local rulers near Kadesh in the vicinity of modern-day Syria. The rulers of Kadesh had originally began the revolt by refusing to shear their scrotums at the start of the month, as was tradition, and was seen as a way to appease the fertility goddess Tefnut and bless the pharaoh's seed to be plentiful and through them grow Egypt's prosperity. This was seen as an affront. The way that they could essentially show proof is this was done by sending proof of the act via vassals carrying the intricately decorated boxes to the pharaoh at the start of the first, second, and third quarters of their 120-day seasons, with the last quarter requiring them to venture into the heart of Egypt and perform the shearing in front of the pharaoh. Interestingly, if anything went wrong during this fourth quarter ritual and the ruler did not properly shear their scrotum, it would be taken as an offense, and the pharaohs would typically have the ruler executed via their manhood being chopped off in a similar fashion to that of the god Osiris, as a way for them to pay penance for their transgressions. Many of these deaths that may have occurred could have been avoided if they had signed up for this episode's sponsor, the Ye Olde Shave Club. Ye Olde Shave Club could have provided them with some of the highest quality razors and skincare products to show Pharaoh their undying fealty through having the smoothest of scrotums. Not only that, but by using code Quarrels at checkout and signing up for their monthly subscription services, they could have ensured they had the highest quality blades with the first 6 months discounted at 50% by using code Quarrels when checking out. So what are you doing? Don't be some normie Kahema Westset who gets their head cut off when it's game time during the last quarter of the season and it's time to go full scorched earth on your balls. So go sign up for Ye Olde Shave Club using code Quarrels now. If you're listening to the show and still think that the revolt did actually start because the rulers of Kadesh refused to shear their testicles, and that wasn't just an absurdity I constructed to place an ad into the show, so the derailment wasn't at least semi-subtle, or was at least semi-subtle, well, I have something I need to tell you. You are super correct and should tell everyone what you just learned about ancient Egypt today and point them to the show. Continuing on now. As Egyptian buffer provinces in the land of Amuru, along the border with the Hittites, attempted to change their vassalage, Thutmose III dealt with the threat personally. He personally sheared the scrotes of each leader tirelessly, ensuring that not a single hair was... Sorry, I'll stop that now. The Canaanites are thought to have been allied with the Mitanni and the Amuru from the region of the two rivers between the headwaters of the Orontes and the Jordan. The driving and main force behind this revolt was the king of Kadesh. He was really tired of getting his scrote shown. Just kidding. The powerful fortress of Kadesh offered protection to him in the city. The king of Megiddo, with an equally strong fortress, joined this alliance. The importance of Megiddo was its geographical location along the southwestern edge of the Jezreel Valley, as it contained a vital trade route for Egypt that Thutmose did not want to give up. The Egyptian inscriptions of the campaign of the Temple of Karnak come from a daily journal kept by the scribe Tjaneni during the campaign. So we have him to thank for this battle, being the first ever really recorded military engagement, like accurately recorded. In the Egyptian account, Thutmose gathered an army of chariots and infantry numbering between 10 and 20,000 men. As the Egyptians mustered their forces, the king of Kadesh gathered many tribal chieftains from Syria, Aram, and Canaan. God damn it. Okay, Canaan. Around him, estimated at between 10 and 15,000 men. Entered Megiddo and set his forces at the waters of Tanakh. He expected that the Egyptians would come by way of Tanakh via Dothaim, the main route from the Mediterranean lowlands into the valley of Kishon, and from Egypt to Mesopotamia. And oh boy, did he guess wrong! The Egyptian army assembled at the border fortress of Tijaru, it was called Sele in Greek, and arrived 10 days later at the loyal city of Gaza. After 1 day's rest, because, after all that journeying, you gotta take a nap, they marched north for 11 days to the city of Yehem. And here, Thutmose sent out scouts. To continue northeast from Yehem, the army had to pass the Camel mountain range, named so because of its many humps, beyond which lay the Jezreel Valley and the city and fortress of Megiddo, where the rebel forces had gathered. There were 3 possible routes from Yehem to Megiddo. Both the northern route via Zefti and Yokneam and the southern route by way of Tanakh were safer but longer routes. And technically, the way of Tanakh would have really effed them over since he was prepping for it. The central route via Aruna, which is in modern days, it's called the Wadi Ara, was more direct but risky. It followed a narrow ravine, and the troops could only travel single file. If the enemy waited at the end of the ravine, the Egyptians would risk being cut down like cows in a slaughterhouse. The army leaders pleaded with him not to take the difficult road, but to take either of the safer routes. Instead, with the information from the scouts, Thutmose III decided to take the direct path to Megiddo. He believed that if his generals advised him to take the easier routes, then his enemy would assume he would do so. So he decided to do the unexpected, which, smart move. I mean, overall, he's like, if my enemy is as smart as me, and they're as smart as my generals, they're going to have assumed that those are the routes I'm going to be taking. So we're going to be going the harder route. The king of Kadesh had left large infantry detachments guarding the two more likely paths and virtually ignored the Aruna route. Ignoring the danger of spreading out his army in the mountains where leading elements might be subject to enemy ambush and narrow mountain passes, and his main force still far behind in Aruna, unable to come to their aid. Thutmose took the direct route through Aruna, the Wadi Ara. The man had a ton of trust in his scouts to do this, and a ton of trust in himself, because this was basically suicide if it were inaccurate. To reduce the risk, Thutmose himself led his men through Aruna. His light infantry and the mounted bowmen, known as Haibru, moved in quickly to eliminate any rebel pickets, leaving the main force of chariots to follow. With the city lightly guarded by the enemy, Thutmose led a quick assault, scattered the rebels, and entered the valley unopposed. Now the Egyptian army had a clear path to Megiddo, with the main forces of the rebel army far away to the northwest and southeast. Thutmose seized the opportunity. He set up camp at the end of the day, but during the night, arrayed his forces close to the enemy. And the next morning they attacked. It cannot be established if the surprised king of Kadesh had managed to fully prepare for battle. Even if he did, it did not do him much good. That being said, the idea here is no one's sure if he was actually able to prep for battle. If he was like, oh shoot, because they did have quite a sizable force still end up at the city, but it seems to not have mattered. So those forces were on high ground adjacent to the fortress. The Egyptian line was arranged in a concave formation consisting of three wings that threatened both the Canaanite flanks. Both the Egyptians and the Canaanites are estimated to have had around 1,000 chariots and 10,000 infantry. The pharaoh led the attack from the center. The combination of position and numbers, superior maneuverability of their left wing, along with an early, bold attack, broke the enemy's will. Their line immediately collapsed. Those near the city fled into it, closing the gates behind them. Essentially, Thutmose got that sneak attack in with 10,000 people. And those extra 5d6 damage per person was all that was needed to crush his enemies. Playing a lot of D&D. I'm wearing a sweater today with D&D. So, come on. That should have been expected in this episode. Some sort of D&D reference where I'm wearing this sweater. So, the Egyptian soldiers, watching their enemy run away, began to plunder the enemy camp. During the plunder, they captured 924 chariots, which was 92.4% of the chariots the enemy had brought, and 200 suits of armor. That's crazy. That's ridiculous numbers. That's near you captured legit everything. They probably could have just said, yeah, so he took all of the chariots at that point. Unfortunately for the Egyptians, during this confusion, the scattered Canaanite forces, including the kings of Kadesh and Megiddo, were able to rejoin the defenders inside the city. Those inside lowered tied together clothing to the men and chariots and pulled them up over the walls. Thus, the opportunity of a quick capture of the city following the battle was lost. They almost had this done in one day after they just ventured out there. And just because they were plundering a little too good, they lost the opportunity just to not have this turn into a 7-month siege that it would. But yeah, so the city would be besieged for 7 months, and the king of Kadesh escaped. Thutmose built a moat and a wooden palisade, which is essentially, those fences you think of when you think about Jamestown or the Mayflower, and like the little triangle fence thing they built around for like their little city. They're essentially their fort. It was like that. Just a bunch of like wooden stakes in the ground right next to each other. So they eventually forced its occupants to surrender because they couldn't really get food or get out without dying. And so they're like, well, shit, and seceded. So at Karnak, it is recorded that the victorious army took home 340 prisoners, 2,041 mares, 191 foals, 6 stallions, 924 chariots, 200 suits of armor, 502 bows, 1,929 cattle, 22,500 sheep, that's a lot of sheep, and the royal armor, chariot, and tent poles of the king of Megiddo. The city and citizens were spared, because he is a merciful god king. A number of other cities in the Jezreel Valley were conquered, and Egyptian authority in the area was restored. And because of this, Egypt's realm was expanded. And as Paul K. Davis wrote, by reestablishing Egyptian dominance in Canaan, Thutmose began a reign in which Egypt reached its greatest expanse as an empire. Thutmose III required from the defeated kings that they each send a son to the Egyptian court. There they received an Egyptian education, something that the Ottomans and Turks would later emulate with their vassals as well, where conquered kingdoms where they would have the kings send their sons to their courts to learn their language and understand them better. It's honestly pretty smart, and it helps it helps reduce resentment built, especially when their sons, who are going to be their heirs, take over. They can, they probably grew up being friends with some of the people in the Egyptian court. Very smart, very diplomatic, and well-executed maneuver there. That definitely gets repeated constantly throughout history. So when they returned to their homelands, they governed with Egyptian sympathies, like I said. Nevertheless, the victory at Megiddo was only the beginning of the pacification of the Levant. Only after several further campaigns conducted almost annually, so every year, was the unrest cooled. One unanticipated result came in the form of the word Armageddon, which took its root from Megiddo's name. So, Egypt went on to become a virtual world superpower whose influence and impact on the world can still be felt to this day. Oddly enough, one of the most interesting things about this battle is that it would essentially repeat itself over 3,400 years later during World War I, with General Allenby taking the place of Thutmose III, taking the same risky maneuver and having his troops take the same narrow route up the Wadi Ara to mount a surprise attack on the Ottomans and the Germans. But that is a battle for another episode, and brings us to the end of today's Historical Quarrel. Well, how was that episode, everyone? That was relatively short. I know, however, that a lot of people have been asking for that. And if this is the preferred route, I don't mind going this route at all. Not bad. No problem. If you wanted me to expand on more information, I can do that. It's just I need to know. I need to know what's preferred. I need to know what you would like to have me do in terms of that. Because I could have gone a little bit more deep into Thutmose's life, kind of like Egypt before that, what was known, what wasn't known. Go into who would have been the possible kings of Kadesh or the king of Megiddo at that point. See if there was any lineage or charts that I could have found and got more names for it. Instead, I was like, let's just focus on the battle, what happened, tell those facts, and then end the episode. And if this way, the way I did it today is the preferred way, I will do that. If you prefer more research, more things kind of conducted, more things done for an episode like this, let me know. I will definitely do that, try gain greater insight. But I just kind of figured since enough people had asked for this or just asked for straight facts. And for those of you that don't like my jokes, I'm sorry. I like doing them. It helps it make it more fun for me. And it's not going to happen as often. I've definitely reduced the amount of jokes. The fake ad in there. I needed that. Okay, that was for me. I needed that because I thought it'd be really funny. And I really like doing like fake outs and stuff like that. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry. But that was for me. So I'm sorry that took you out of it. If you comment on the video, I assume that you haven't made it past here because you were mad about that part. I will reply and I'll just be like, listen, I'm sorry. That was for me. That's for me to have fun. Going forward though, with the new show happening and with Hard Homie still going on, I do plan on ramping up the production quality for the show. And what that will entail is a couple things. Number one, going to be getting a soundboard here soon, and a XLR cable, because this mic is XLR capable. I figured, I have software that can do a lot of what a soundboard can for me. But if I can just have a soundboard out and get better at it, I'm going to do that. Plus, I've used a soundboard in the past, and honestly, it's not that hard, not that difficult. It's just it's going to be the exact same thing I do with the software, just with like a knob. And I've heard that it's easier to kind of like adjust as you're going, which when I did broadcasting in high school, definitely was the case. Definitely a lot easier for sure to adjust while you're going on certain things. But besides that, I plan on getting better lighting, a better camera, probably a couple different cameras. Try and set it up so that this feels more like a studio almost, even though it's literally just my office, my work area. And I don't know, do a couple other things to make this feel a lot more professional, have the edits be a lot cleaner. I want to take more time especially the second show. I'm going to take a lot more time on the second show. It's going to be very heavily produced, very like over the top YouTube, what you've come to expect from most content creators that have been in the game for as long as they have been, for like the 10 years. I'm going to try and reach that level, that zenith that it appears to me to be, to get my show up to that high quality standard. And I'd like to slowly do that over time with these other shows, but because of how not ahead of schedule I am, and the fact that I have a full-time job, probably going to take a while. You're not going to see that ramp up in production quality for the next few months, probably up until I start doing ancient tabletops, and once that starts dropping and releasing. I don't know if that will be weekly. That might be a monthly thing. I go once a month, like here's the board game I was reviewing, here's all the things I did for it. I do plan on recreating a few of the ancient games. The plan so far is recreate the games, record myself playing them, maybe get a couple friends to come over and play them, and then essentially just do like a review. And it's going to be like a 5-10 minute video. But it's going to take a lot of research. I'm going to have to learn a lot. I'm going to have to write a script. I'm going to have to shoot and film a bunch of different things. I was even thinking about essentially recruiting some friends who are in film school here in Utah to maybe help me with this. We'll see if that's possible at all. I even have some buddies who are just doing their own thing, shooting their own films, and I might just ask them for some help or some tips on how to shoot that. Because again, I want the quality to be there. I want that production level to be there for you guys. Don't want this just to be a small town, like a small, simple thing anymore. I want it to be cool. I shouldn't say cool, but I want it to be high quality. I want it to be the best that it can be. And to do that takes a bunch of work. So I guess essentially what I'm doing here by telling you all this is asking you guys to have just some patience with me as I figure that out. And if you are really hankering for the ancient tabletops episodes, I'll get those. I might do something on the Patreon for you guys, so that way you can kind of stay updated and see what cool stuff I'm working on for it. If you sign up for the Patreon, which I know is a lot to ask people. It's like, people are like, it's only $5. I'm like, nah, I mean, people need those $5 sometimes. $5 can make or break it for people. So, but if you like what I'm doing and you want to see the show improve, you want to support the show, and the other shows as well, join our Patreon. That's probably the best way you can do it. If you do not have the money, I completely understand. Don't even feel bad. You should never feel bad for not being able to spend money on something that you might want to. And that's responsible. If you can't, you can't. If you want to do something still to help, here's a couple things you can do. You can like the episode. You can subscribe if you are just stumbling on this today. Haven't subscribed on our YouTube channel. You can leave a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I don't know if YouTube or what was Google Podcasts is doing like stuff on the YouTube Music app, but it's kind of like I have this show set up so it's on both YouTube and the YouTube podcast thing. And share it with a friend. Word of mouth is the best way to grow a channel. And if you are listening to this, chances are you probably know someone who is also going to enjoy listening to this, or you're probably friends with them. The whole idea of building an audience and building a community is finding like-minded people who enjoy the same things you do and appreciate the same things you do. And your friends are going to be like-minded people, usually. Not always. I have friends who disagree with me on a bunch of stuff, but they agree with me on other things that, so I get that too. If you're like, this is a little too niche, Tyler. Maybe a little too much. I don't know if I can share this with Bob, who likes sports and likes the same team that I like for sports. I'm like, okay, that's fair. But if you do know someone, share it with them. And maybe they grow to like it, or maybe they hate it. And, that's just something you kind of figure out too. It's a good time. Hopefully I have been doing better about cutting back on the swearing as well. I know that was a big complaint. Trying not because I'm not okay with swearing and because stuff, but I saw people's point where it's just, it can sound unneeded. It's like unnecessary. And I've been trying to reduce that as my own filler language with like my boys too, with my son being 3 and mimicking everything I say. So I did, my other son turning 2 later this year. I'm turning 27. Oh man, it's crazy. Oh yeah, I'm look. I don't know how young people thought I was, but 27. Oh, I'm gonna be turning 30 in 3 years. So if I'm now just like a little too young for some people, I understand that too. I get that. To like listen to, it might make you feel weird. Listen to a 27-year-old if you're older, but maybe not. Maybe you don't care. I don't really care how old you are. If you listen to the show, you could be like an 80. It's cool. Yeah, that's, I ramble here at the end because that's where I feel like I can. And I know a lot of people kind of tune out. So, but that's kind of it as far as like what I'm planning on doing for the rest of the show. Yeah, that's, if you have any questions, concerns, message me, reach out to me on Instagram, or you can email historicalquarrels@gmail.com. And I like talking to everybody. I like taking advice. I'm not above it. Not perfect. I'm brand new to this game, and I do want to increase the quality of the show. So I'm going to do my best there. You guys have a good one. I love you all. Goodbye.